conversations like the one with my daughter where we would round the corner and she would see someone sleeping on the street in the middle of the city and would just say, Dad, why don't we do something? Why are we letting this happen? And it felt like we as a city were feeling more and more powerless that we could actually solve this, and so I felt like there must be a path forward.
When we're thinking about individuals experiencing homelessness, they're all people just like you and I. And I think it's important that we remind ourselves of that because each individual has their own personal experience. And we always need to take that into consideration when we are thinking through, one, how to best serve individuals that are experiencing homelessness in that situation, and any specific challenges that they're facing as it relates to what their experience looks like.
It's not a homeless problem, it's a hopeless problem. And that's what it's all about. When the homeless feel forgotten, they feel hopeless.
A lot of my friends died because, it was cold. They got frostbite, they lost their fingers. It's really dangerous because you don't know who's going to be sneaking up on you, try to rob you. So it is more dangerous out there than it is being inside.
One story that certainly stays with me is George, who was a gentleman I met up at 48th in Colorado. He lost his wife and his son in an accident. He had served in the military, and when we talked to him, he never asked for anything for himself. There was always women in the camp he was worried about, wanted to make sure they had sleeping bags, they had tent, they had food, they had space heaters.
I feel like I'm waking up out of a nightmare to a reality of where finally I can get help and be somewhere that helps all of it, just not me.
And George told some of his story. In the middle of it, he starts reciting this poem that he said was a favorite of his. He probably goes through 15 stanzas of a poem from memory. And it is the poem he wrote for his wife and son's funeral about what it was like to face loss and try to keep going. We got to be there the day that we moved him out of that tent and into transitional housing.
In this conversation, we sort of see people living on the streets as other. We don't see them as being connected to us. And I think for me, just recognizing that we have a deep connection, that people living on the streets are our sisters and brothers. We have a moral responsibility to care for one another.
And I think it's important that we remind ourselves of that because each individual has their own personal experience. People can and do face mental health challenges, substance misuse challenges, physical ailments, which can all result in an episode of homelessness.
Homelessness and housing stability have been the top two issues facing Denver. In July of 2023, newly elected Mayor Mike Johnston launched a coordinated citywide response to house 1,000 individuals by the end of the year.
When we won the election and started to get prepared for how to start the first day of administration, I just kept hearing people all around the city as this is the most important crisis to solve, and that was what we tried to focus on. Felt like that was the mandate we got when we were elected. When we looked at the point in time count that had about 1,500 people, we thought, could we try to do something that no one's done before? Could we try to house 2/3 of the point in time count in 1 year?
The United States Department of Housing and Urban Development is one of the executive departments of the U.S. federal government. HUD conducts an annual point-in-time count on a single night in January. Cities use the results of that count as a reference for the year when calculating the number of people experiencing homelessness.
Now we know that there's not necessarily direct correlation. It's not 1,400 minus 1,100 is our final result. It's not a static population of folks. And so we wanted to set a big, audacious goal.
That's why we'll declare a state of emergency. That's why we'll bring people together from all these different departments to work collaboratively. And it gave me a great chance to get to know so many leaders in the city so quickly because we were down in the Emergency Operations Center.
Denver's Emergency Operations Center, in conjunction with the Joint Information Center, serve as the centralized location for government leadership and Denver employee personnel to coordinate operations during an emergency or declared disaster. Its mission? To save the city.
I remember the first day I walked down into the EOC just before Mayor Johnston was sworn in and saw the sign that says "To save the city" and saw the vest. Felt like I was going into a war bunker.
The EOC receives all the current data in support of persons experiencing homelessness. From that information, the team identify, acquire, and establish congregate facilities. Managed personnel from within the city by identifying skills which best serve to help resolve the current emergency. Review situational analysis in real time to better manage resources across multiple agencies.
We know that to be able to identify locations, to be able to rehab them, to retrofit them, to be able to permit them, to be able to get construction up on those sites is going to take a tremendous amount of effort and speed from our internal agencies and our external partners. And the power of the emergency declaration allows us to move much more quickly and swiftly through what could otherwise be slower regulatory processes for some of that leadership to happen.
I think back to July 18th when the mayor had a press conference and declared a state of emergency with all of City Council standing beside him. And over the course of the many months, we brought forward dozens of bills and resolutions and contracts. We had intense discussions over that course of time, but Council kept approving these contracts and kept moving this forward.
What was different and unique about the Johnston administration as they came into power in collaboration with City Council was that we moved beyond aspiration. We set a very specific goal, and then we also asked for all city agencies to join us in this emergency.
And they really helped lead the conversation in their communities about how we could all be a part of this solution.
And then we also engage with folks living in encampments, with folks that are service providers are providing support. We made sure that our lens and our view for this solution was broader than simply what the city and what government can provide.
I had spent 3 years before I became mayor working at a foundation locally, and we were dedicated entirely to supporting some of the city's toughest social problems. But along the way, I really got to meet people that I thought had figured out pieces of this puzzle. Cole was one of them.
I've been in Denver since January 2014, been working and living and moving directly alongside of people experiencing homelessness that entire time. That led me to spending 5.5 years co-founding and leading an organization called the Colorado Village Collaborative, where I helped develop the micro-community model.
Denver has utilized micro-communities, small land parcels that can house residents in pallet shelters or tiny homes, provide security for residents, and wraparound services on site. House 1000 required more. In addition to micro-communities, the plan included opening hotels.
House 1000 was a great opportunity for us to look at ways collaboratively that we can work with the administration to increase the dignity of living for folks who are living in encampments and move them indoors. But that required a lot of expense. Our role as city council members is to ensure that those funds were spent correctly.
Under House 1000, camps would no longer be moved from one block to another, but instead permanently closed. Everyone from the camps were brought indoors to temporary housing. Denver closed 10 camps by bringing forward 7 sites in under 6 months.
The City Council were incredible partners. Every step of the way, they asked the right questions, they pushed on the right things that made our plan better at key moments. They weren't just willing to be a rubber stamp, they pushed back if they didn't like the design, and every time they did that, the plan got better.
The effects of homelessness in Denver impacted small businesses in big ways. Many businesses saw a decline in revenue because encampments kept customers from engaging with them. Councilman Watson, the mayor's office, and the Department of Denver Economic Development and Opportunity began work to develop grants for these small businesses.
We were able to identify initially $500,000. It was because of our initiative. We were able to raise that amount to $1 million. Those small businesses were able to spend those funds in any way that helped to sustain them and helped to sustain their employees.
I mean, the idea that a council could take on a topic this complicated, this aggressive, have really in-depth conversations about it, have great in-depth conversations with their neighbors about it, and still find a way to build a package they could come together around with that degree of consensus, that is quite remarkable.
A key player in Denver's homelessness resolution effort has been the Department of Housing Stability. Established in 2019, HOST addresses homelessness by creating a healthy, housed, and connected Denver.
And the HOST team was just remarkable. I remember New Year's Eve, December 31st at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. It's the last couple hours of the year. And our host teams are still out there on the street talking to people who are out in the cold who want to come in. Where are you staying right now?
Nowhere.
Our host team gave so much of themselves.
Before the Johnston administration even came on board, there were 3 tax measures that the host was able to get passed through to really help with the affordability of homes, to really help with development of affordable housing, as well as promote homelessness resolution activities in the city. We have a large system and network of homelessness service providers throughout the city and county of Denver that have been doing this work for quite some time. Obviously, with the Johnston administration coming on board, it really expedited our timeline.
And that was true across our team. We call them the Great 8 because there's sort of 8 people that all came in on day one. They were all people with deep community ties who'd led important social efforts before, whether they were school teachers or nonprofit leaders. There were people who understood how to work with community, how to set ambitious goals, how to stay at it day in and day out. And so that was, I think, a tremendous benefit for us, and they were a huge part of the success.
All the people that we met from across the agencies, that really developed the team that we then utilized to deliver on this goal. And just all the lessons that we learned and the cross-agency collaboration that we delivered through that was part of what we needed to help bring this goal forward.
The real work begins now with ensuring that the service providers that are providing wraparound service for folks, whether it's in hotels or micro-communities, that service is actually moving those folks to another level.
It's just a matter of having support and I think the right connections, and then anything is possible.
It really starts with like, hey, do you have your essential documents? All of the necessities in order to start to even apply for housing.
Because I know that the wraparound services are here. I'm just going to be in it to win it.
So I'm hoping to get myself back on my feet, start working again, and be the person that I was before that I became homeless, because I never pictured myself seeing me on the other side of the fence, as we call it.
I want to give back because I feel valued. And that's where the stability comes in, because when I feel valued, I feel accepted. Now I'm encouraged. I want to go out. I want to get that job. Thank you.
One guy, Rico, I helped, he just sat in the room and looked around and said, I wasn't sure I'd ever get back to someplace like this. And that sense of relief of I can take a breath, I can get my life together, I can get an ID, I can apply for a job, I get the support I need. That is the most powerful part, and that happens one story at a time. But I think every one of those lives that are not going to be lost on the streets of Denver will be more than worth the effort that we all put into it.
13,000 Denver employees, 1,000 city partners, as well as countless volunteers rose to meet this challenge. House 1000 is as much their success as it is any one administration's.
When we started those big movements of people into our transitional housing sites in December, until the end of the year, we did not have a single person die outside on the streets of Denver. After 11 months in which we saw 311 people die, the idea that this change fundamentally got people safe, got them inside, got them services.
Denver has done a really great job at revamping the shelter system to make it 24/7, ensure that meals are available and ready for folks, and making sure it's a place where folks can access case management and things of that nature so they can move on and move forward. And I think people have shown that they trust that system by entering into it and remaining with that.
It makes me feel very emotional. It makes me feel very emotional. I really want the homeless population of Denver, the Denverite citizens who are housed under House 1000, to take advantage of this initiative.
We are not at all under the illusion that somehow homelessness is over or that we've won and that we can move on to the next thing. This is just the start. So that's why we will have a big goal to do another 1,000 people this year, because we know the work's not over. There are still folks out on the streets tonight, and we don't want them out there.
The number one thing that people come into contact with is just housing affordability. We find more people ending up on the street and in shelters just due to that.
So we're trying to prevent people from entering homelessness with our rental assistance work that the City Council led on. And so we are staying at it, but now we have the excitement and the momentum and the conviction that we can really beat this thing. If we stay at it, we can find all the Georges and get them into housing and shelter and get them onto permanent housing if we stay committed. So that's what gives me the energy and the spirit, not that we think we're done, but that we know we are rowing in the right direction, and for the first time we're all rowing together.
Stay elevated by subscribing to the city's YouTube page and stay tuned to our social media channels for more content. Don't miss our new episodes of Elevating Denver, premiering each month. Thanks for watching, Denver.